Is this thing on? Is this contraption happening? Yes, it looks like we are live. What's happening, everybody? Hope everybody is having a fantastic, whatever day you're watching this. So it's the end of July 2022. So immediately I have to date this video for this video to carry any relevance. And again, just like when I made the video about that 3-liter Hurricane engine earlier in discussing where it fits in line with all the rest of these new twin turbo variants that seem to be coming down the pipe for all these manufacturers. Well, the thing is that I'm shopping for a truck right now. And interestingly enough, as much as I love the Ram, I'm really intoxicated by the EcoBoost, that 3.5-liter, not so much the 2.7, but the EcoBoost 3.5-liter. 400 horsepower, 500 pound-feet of torque, checking in at about 15 pounds of boost. That engine, when you test drive that truck with that engine, it'll get your attention pretty quickly. As a matter of fact, that truck runs pretty good. But I've got some questions. I'm concerned about long-term durability. Is maintenance going to be a hassle with an engine that small? Should I just stick with what I know? Well, stick with what I know works best, especially for me, long-term, for longevity, and that's to go with a large naturally aspirated V8. But there's only one problem. The large naturally aspirated V8 that I would kind of like, the 6.2-liter in the GM offerings, that's right, I kind of went there here. Yeah, it's not offered in the truck that I actually want. And, oh yeah, the other engine that I would want potentially, which would be the 5-liter, well, it's the smallest of the group. And, well, it's attached, unfortunately, to the Ford truck, which of all the trucks that I've driven was the worst riding. So now we're back into the Ram, which, let's be honest, it really was my favorite from the beginning. As a matter of fact, it's really tough to beat the Ram 5.7-liter because, well, number one, it's the largest engine that's offered in the truck that I'm looking for. And let's be honest, that truck rides better than the field. So it's difficult to root for any of the rest of the opposition when you've got so much going for the Ram just in general. By the way, yes, the 5.7 is the largest engine available for the trim level that I'm looking for, which is the base model truck. You can get the 5-liter and you can get the 5.3-liter Ford and GM respectively. 5-liter runs pretty good. 5.3-liter is a dog. The 5.7-liter runs really good. So there's that. But it's, again, the end of July 2022. I still can't order the truck that I want. See, the problem is that I want a basic work truck, vinyl interior, rubber floors. That is a non-negotiable deal breaker. If I can't get that in the truck, then I'm not going to buy the truck. And unless a dealer says, hey, we'll get you vinyl seats and a rubber floor if you just buy this one that has carpet and, well, cloth seats, then we'll make a deal. The thing is, nobody's stepping up in that respect. And it doesn't really matter to me. The truck that I want is the truck that I want. Dealers just don't really do things like they used to. I'm learning. But here's the thing. All that aside, let me get to the point of all this. Looming in the distance is the promise that this new Hurricane 3-liter is going to be on the way soon. And I've got some questions for you guys. I'd like to get your input. Which engine would you actually option for your truck were it available? Let's say, for example, the 2023 or 2024 model year Ram offers up the 3-liter Hurricane engine. Cool name, by the way. It's an old Willis engine name, by the way. But would you option for the 3-liter? The more I've looked into this prospect, the more I'm leaning towards sticking with the V8 engine. Only because I can only compare the Hurricane, at least the concept of the Hurricane, even though it's an inline 6 versus a V6. I can only kind of run the numbers through my head as other manufacturers have introduced these small V6s with twin turbos to their trucks and, well, all the issues that they've had leading up to this. Examples of that would be the Tundra, currently running into issues with turbo problems, wastegates, and I don't know, a couple of other things, I'm sure. Not to mention that truck just really doesn't seem to perform the way that it should, with just south of 400 horsepower and just south of 500 pound-feet of torque. Maybe it's a weight thing. But the other thing is the seemingly extremely vocal, although probably a significant minority, however loud it may be, but the seeming supernova of complaints that comes from Ford EcoBoost techs, not necessarily the owners, but the technicians that work on these things, basically lamenting the idea of ever having to turn another wrench on another EcoBoost motor, which to me is a little bit funny in a way because, well, that's kind of what they do. But in terms of giving advice, everyone is saying if you see an EcoBoost, turn 6, firewall it because of the potential problems. Now, I have to admit, having worked at a shop, I understand where these guys are coming from. When you work at a shop, one of the things that you're going to discover very, very quickly is that you see the problems that never, ever happen, and you see them all the time. What does that mean exactly? Okay, well, think of it like being a doctor. If you're a doctor and the only people that you ever see are people that have the cold, the flu, then you may be inclined to think that every human being walking around is sick. They just happen to be coming by and visiting you to say hi and to get their requisite shot, right? Well, it's the same thing when you're a tech. The only time people bring their cars in for you to see them is when they're broken. And when they break, there's all kinds of different reasons for them to break. Normally, it's lack of proper maintenance. But the problem is proper maintenance can be, well, a bit subjective. In other words, let's say you're used to changing the oil every 7,000 to 10,000 miles. Well, that might not be a bad idea for some engines, and it could work just fine with some oils and their additive packages and all that comes with that. However, when you start to really up the ante when it comes to heat, power, specific output, things like that, like these 3.5 liter or presumably 3 liter Hurricane engines, again, 500 horsepower out of that Hurricane, by the way, you'll maybe find out pretty quickly that, well, that might not be the right oil change strategy. As a matter of fact, every 4,000 miles might be adequate. So what you think you're doing the right way, you're actually doing the wrong way. In other words, by treating that small displacement, high boost engine like a naturally aspirated lumbering V8 that's not going to experience the cylinder pressures or the crank bearing loads that the small engine would presumably have to go through. So for me, I'm looking at this from a little bit more of a pragmatic point of view. Do I go the route? Do I hold out on the Hurricane? Even though I know I've said in the past that, man, that'd be awesome. I'd be first to jump on that. Well, some time has passed since I made those statements. And, well, the more I'm looking at it, the more I become a little bit nervous. You see, the reason why I say that is I'm a little bit concerned with the longevity of an engine that is that small, making that much power to try to drive around that much weight. And to me, 3 liter falls, I guess, right in the middle of 2.7 and 3.5. I mean, any displacement at that level would. But the idea is that it's eerily close to that 2.7 liter number. That 2.7 liter displacement or 3 liter displacement means you need a lot more boost to make the same amount of power as a slightly larger engine with less boost. And as I pointed out, in the case of the Hurricane, the standard output, well, you're looking at 22 pounds of boost versus 15 for the 3.5 liter standard output EcoBoost. So, and again, 3.5 liter versus the 3 liter, those are the engines that are going to be direct line of sight competitors with each other. Nobody's going to be comparing 5 liter Ford to the new Stellantis Hurricane. It's just not really how it works, is it? So what would you do? Would you stick with that 5.7 or would you opt for the Hurricane? The thing is with me, as much as I want to embrace the Hurricane engine, there's just not enough known about it yet. Remember with the EcoBoost, at least what they were doing is they were running that thing out there like Baja. They would throw that engine in different trucks and just wail on it. And Ford would show you this truck doing all kinds of crazy stuff, all the while, I don't know, sounding like a spastic lawnmower, just brat, 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 running off. It almost sounds like a two-stroke, really, when they put that exhaust on it. The thing is that, but there was some marketing behind it from that standpoint. And they also did it with the 2.7 liter. If you don't remember that, what it was that they kind of did the same thing that they did with the 3.5 liter. They did with the 2.7. They basically torture tested it, ran it through Baja, all this other stuff. Regardless of what problems came later, at least you had some level of excitement and something cool when you're looking at the prospect of that 3.5 liter. We haven't seen anything like that from Stellantis with this 3-liter Hurricane engine. We haven't seen it get put into anything that's going to be all that exciting, save for the potential ability to order this thing in a Grand Cherokee or something like that. Basically, some Luxo barge that you got to be able to shell out 70 or 80 or 90 large to be able to put in your driveway. Well, okay, fantastic. I guess it can drive that thing around town, but the reality is that that's not exciting. All right, putting that engine into what is in essence just a big version of Dodge's Tahoe isn't all that, well, it's not going to get anybody's juices flowing. What I'd like to see is I'd like to see that engine in a Rebel type package. Put it into a 4-wheel drive package, go out there and beat on the thing. Let's see what this thing is actually made of. Can it handle getting beaten up? Something else I'd like to know. It's fairly common knowledge that the 2.7 Ford EcoBoost running on 16 pounds of boost, granted it's significantly lower output, but even the 2.7 benefits from running premium fuel. The 3.5 liter, it's known that those trucks pick up when you run better fuel in them, regardless of what the owner's manual may say. What I'm curious about is how does the Hurricane engine act when you just run 87 octane through it? Is it a dog? Is it rated at 87 octane? Does it say that it would be a good idea to run 89 the way that the 5.7 reads? Or does it say for actual performance, use premium? However, you can run this on 87, one of those disclaimer type things. That would be pretty interesting, with the understanding, by the way, that yes, the 3.0 HO Hurricane, the high output Hurricane, you do have to run premium fuel in that thing to get, well, it's required. It's not just to get best performance. It's saying that it has to have premium fuel. Dang it. Now we're back into this. So you have to run premium fuel in an engine that is making, 26 pounds of boost. I got it written right over here. 26 pounds of boost for the HO, 22 pounds of boost for the standard output. Again, 15 for the 3.5 liter. Something doesn't sound right. Again, you're having to run 50% more boost than the 3.5 liter EcoBoost to make the same amount of power. There's going to be a lot of heat getting generated in a lot of different areas. I'm curious as to how they're going to manage all of the heat in general with that engine. Could you imagine? I mean, listen, guys are already complaining or have been complaining, lamenting, really. It's a drinking game. I think that's 3 or 4 times I've said lamenting. Anyway, lamenting the heat. In other words, the heat buildup, those things are, 220, 240 is like the going temperature when they're dragging stuff around just in general as far as coolant temperatures. Now, granted, anything can be engineered to handle anything else. I understand all of that. But a lot of guys get a little bit nervous when they start seeing these crazy engine coolant temperatures. Again, if you've got a 6.4 of those, some of these temperatures might not be outside of the realm of norm anyway. But I've got to ask the question, are you really going to trust a 3-liter inline 6? I get it. It's cool and all. But are you really going to trust a 3-liter twin turbo engine in a full-size truck when really there's not that much of a benefit in terms of power output. I mean, yeah, I get it. 400 horsepower, 435, 450, whatever pound-feet of torque. That's a little bit more than the 5.7, but it's not a lot more. And that little 3-liter, keep in mind, anytime you even tip into the throttle and put the thing into boost, it's going to wipe out any benefit that you may have been able to realize in terms of fuel economy. So in saying all that, yeah, it's the same argument that the Ford guys have had for, well, do you go 5-liter and get your 400 horsepower and 400 pound-feet of torque? Maybe that's on premium fuel. Maybe that's not, because it's 12.5 to 1, which is still kind of sketchy. But anyway, do you go with that V8, or do you go with that, albeit more fun to drive, more temperamental, and certainly more sensitive to maintenance intervals, V6 with a turbo? Even when you're comparing it to the 2.7, I think the 2.7 is detuned enough that it has a lot of overhead, so to speak, when it comes to, well, can you get away with the 7,000 to 8,000 mile oil change intervals, which for some reason people seem to hang on, which I still will never understand, even though I don't care what the oil manufacturer says. Anyway, are they going to cut you a check if that engine fails? Are they going to cut you a check when your cam phasers fail? Anyway, it's beside the point. Again, the 2.7 seems to not suffer from the same issues that the 3.5-liter does, but it's also making a lot less power. And I don't think guys are really expecting as much out of it as they are the 3.5 either. They're actually working the heck out of that 3.5-liter the way that it was designed to. So, or at least, I'm sorry, the way that it was marketed to be able to, get out there and actually work, right? So in looking into all of this, the interesting thing is right now, none of the websites that I could find, at least as of today, I could be wrong because I didn't really dive back into all of them today, but at least throughout this week, you can't order a 2023 Ford, you can't order a 2023 Ram, and can't order a 2023 GMC or Chevrolet. Nissan and Toyota, I think, are following suit with that. So I don't know what's going to be offered in 2023. And I've reached out to Dodge to ask, to say, hey, when am I going to be able to scratch my name onto the paper to give my new Ram a home? And they basically reached out back to me and said, well, Stellantis, they don't have anything to say to you about when Ram or what's going to happen past the 2022 model year, even though it's July, which traditionally has always been the year that your next year vehicles fall in line for. If it is, in other words, if the vehicle's built in July and it's 2021, if it's built July 2021, it's going to be a 2022 model year vehicle. That's always the way it's always been. So I can't even put the order in, which is kind of weird, but I don't know. We'll see where all of that ends up going. But anyway, curious to hear what you guys think, and frankly, what y'all's experience has been with your EcoBoosts. See, the thing is part of me really, really, really wants the 3.5-liter EcoBoost, basically because I just like the power of the thing. I like the way that it runs, and I can option it with a 355 gear in the configuration that I want. Unfortunately, I'd have to suffer the indignity of driving an F-150, but I've done it in the past and rather enjoyed it. So I'm no stranger to that, and I would not have any problem, I guess, suffering through that again. Not a bad place to be. But again, the Ram rides so much better, and it would be real difficult for me to give up the ride quality, the ergonomics, and the fact that I have a known entity with that 5.7 Hemi in terms of durability and longevity. I know how many miles can be put on one of those things with reasonable levels of service, and they last seemingly now forever. I mean, we've got trucks in the fleet that, again, were turned in at 300,000 miles. We have several that are well over 250. I think they're 265, 275 in some cases, two different trucks I'm thinking of. Mine seems to be kind of a low mileage variety at 160,000 miles. So that alone is enough for me to not necessarily want to jump ship. This is a work truck, and I don't really want to have any downtime with this. If those wheels aren't turning, I'm not earning type of thing. So anyway, let me check in with you guys before I get too deep into this. Let's see. What's Lanata saying? What up, B? Ow, what's up, man? X is in saying, what up, Professor B? Got the flex. I like it. Trying to get my arm to look like the flex icon. And I don't have the shades. Do I? Nope, I got my regular glasses. X got the cadence down perfect too. Got the arm and the dude. Ardell's in saying, good evening, B. Good evening. Chuck is in saying, good evening, B. And everybody, what's up? Marco Boy Ties in. I like it. Got the high five and the gear and the flex. Andy saying, good evening, Professor Brian. What's happening, Andy? I'm going to blow up my arm here. There you go. Uncle Sneakford saying, very quick answer to your question. I ain't giving up my 6'4" Charger for nothing other than a healthy Hellcat. It's a good way to look at it. Thing is I was going to get into this here in just a minute. We can just remind me to touch base on this. With the Roadkill Nights butting right up against the Woodward Avenue Dream Cruise, Dodge is going to be announcing the latest in, well, it's going to be what's coming, in essence, what vehicles they're looking to make in the coming years in terms of hybrid technology, what they're looking for as far as EVs, what the future of the muscle car is going to be according to Dodge. And I've got a lot of opinions on this, and I almost feel like I need to do it like its own video. But one of the interesting things that I've seen when talking about where Dodge is really going, the future of the muscle car and everything else, what I'm reminded of is this little Ford Mustang that stuck around. And one of the reasons why the Mustang was so endearing to a lot of people and what kept a lot of people in the muscle car business was the Mustang. You can call it pony car or whatever, but I'll say muscle car, because in 2007, when there was no Challenger, you still had the GT 500 supercharged Mustang, 500 horsepower, 500 pound-feet of torque. Wasn't any slouch. One of my all-time favorite cars. I'm still shocked that I don't own one or never did own one. Anyway, they were in the game and they stayed in the game when other folks had left or hadn't entered yet. In fact, they were still making Mustangs when there was no Camaro and the Challenger was just a distant idea. So if the Mustang sticks around with the V8 and Dodge doesn't stick around with a V8 and they decide they want to go full Hurricane engine, high output, standard output, whatever output you want to talk about in this new platform, what says you? What about if they go with the hybrid technology, the true hybrid where it's the electric motor sandwiched between the engine and the transmission? In essence, your 400 horsepower standard output Hurricane now turns into a 550 horsepower, 550 foot-pound of torque, 650 pound-feet of torque, however it plays out. You know, electric motors go. Hybrid monster. Does that pique your interest? Is it cool to forego the V8 to get your inline six twin turbo with electric hybrid technology? Why don't you just put it with V8 then, if it's so great, right? That would be my response. I want both. I want the V8 and I want the hybrid. Give it to me. But if I can't have that for whatever stupid reason, would you go with the inline six hybrid? It's faster, it's whatever. Or would you still stick with the V8? It's a tough call. I mean, the numbers seem pretty intoxicating, right? Big numbers, but you still have a rear-wheel drive car. Will it hook? I don't know. Lots of things to consider here. Lots of things that may not matter. And this is one thing I also wanted to talk to you guys about. You know, we're talking a lot about the Hurricane engine and how it would pertain with trucks, but I do want to talk about how it could pertain to cars. But is owning one of these types of cars Is it all about the numbers? Is it really? Listen, I know everybody likes the hauling ass down the freeway, right? That those videos seem to get a whole lot of views, but not that many people that are watching those videos have cars that will do that. Most of them have 5.7 Challengers or Chargers, maybe a 6.4 Challenger or Charger, 5.0 or maybe a Camaro, or nothing, right? That's probably lean more towards that answer. I would say statistically that may. Anyway, is owning one of these cars all about the numbers? Is it more about the theater, the experience? Remember, these are entertainment dollars that you're spending. This is discretionary income on some level to be able to buy one of these things. Are you buying the sound, the noise, the V8 rumble, the romance of that, if it really can be called that? Or are you buying a performance number? Are you buying my car goes 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds, runs the quarter mile in 11.5 and 120 miles an hour? Is that what you're really looking for? Or does that even matter to you? See, the problem with today, and this is where I can kind of, let me sidebar for a minute. The reason why I'm asking a lot about this Hurricane engine is that it's been rumored that this will be the engine that powers not only the Rams and the other truck platforms, but it's also been rumored that this engine family will power the next platform that will replace the LX platforms at some point in 2024, 2025, whatever. So I guess my question is, does it matter that it's an inline six? Do you find anything cool about that? Or has Dodge done too much in terms of marketing to be able to ever remove a V8 from their lineup? The thing is that Dodge has relied far too much on nostalgia to move their brand forward. And it all has centered around Hemi, the word Hemi. So if you bring in the Hurricane, which is technically a historical name, it's the old Willis name for their engines. If you bring in the Hurricane engine, what exactly are you going to be marketing that towards? Who are you marketing that? How are you going to look forward if you've been looking backwards this whole time? I mean, the last time they tried this was in the 80s and 90s. You had cars like the Sprint RT, the GLH, the Dodge 600 Turbo, the Daytona. These are cars that bucked the trend. They were fast little sedan-based hot rods, K-car style hot rods, ES platform hot rods that actually, if they didn't beat their V8 counterparts, hung with them enough to really give them a rash. So I guess my answer is that what Dodge is going to do? Well, seemingly, the answer to that is maybe. However, they've got one less competitor that they're going to have to worry about because Chevrolet is not going to have a Camaro to speak of unless they come out with their own version of whatever Dodge does and they play copycat with it. But anyway, just some things to think about. I'm thinking about this also in terms of the HO platform, that HO Hurricane, 500 horse, 500 pound-feet of torque or whatever. Would that ever scratch an itch if you want a muscle car? I don't know that does play all that well in the United States. And again, especially since you're Dodge and you've been hanging your whole career on the 4-letter word of Hemi, how are you going to go back with another H word, the Hurricane, and have that make any sense to the people that have been buying your cars now since 2008? See where I'm going with this? It makes the message a little bit cloudy, and it makes it look like the company that was supposed to be bucking the trend and fighting the man, well, it makes it look like you just rolled over for the man. How you going to spin this, Dodge? Better be good. And I'll tell you something else. Don't fuck it up, because I'll tell you something. If you do tend to get this wrong with the Hurricane, you're going to have a lot of folks that are really not going to have a reason to go back to Dodge. If the Hurricane engine doesn't play well, doesn't work well, doesn't perform well, and most importantly, doesn't have that Ram endurance when you think about longevity, durability, and everything else that has been really good with that 5.7 liter. Let's not talk about the cams or the lifters right now. At least it has been since 2017 or 2018. So in the last 3 or 4 years, it's been really, really good. Let's hope that this little Hurricane engine can follow suit with that, because I got news for you. If you burn people at this stage of the game, you will push them right back into Ford. And see, that's where the real problem lies, because most Dodge guys, especially most Dodge guys of a certain age, come from a Ford background. They came into Dodge. It's new money for Dodge. Don't screw this up. It's going to be far too easy for these guys to fall back into a comfort zone. And I know this because I'm that guy. If my truck would have failed, I would have absolutely been looking at the Ford and not given Dodge a shot. Whoa, hang on a second. Chuck, my man, C-Note dropped. Holy mackerel. Thank you, brother. Damn, hang on a second. Thank you very much, man. Shoot. I don't even know what to say, brother. Thank you very much. Saying a C-Note from B. My question is, on my new, to me, 2021 Challenger Scat with the 8-speed, on my SRT dashboard, when I'm in sport mode, the paddle shifters won't turn off. I've been driving it without using them, even though they remain on. I hope that's okay. Of course it's okay. All that's telling you is that you can use your paddle shifters should you choose to. With any of the 392 variant cars, they've got the paddles back there. And actually, I never really use my paddle shifters, but if you're driving the car and just flip the paddle shifter, it immediately puts it into manual mode. So yes, you can drive it around in sport mode. It only means that your paddle shifters are available to you should you choose to use them. In street mode or in default, the paddle shifters don't work. So just know that coming into it. But once you put it in sport, they will work. So no, you can drive around like that all you want. Like I say, I hardly ever use mine. So that's a cool question though. And that's how those actually work. It's funny, we're talking about the paddle shifters. I was playing with my truck today, just playing with, just selecting gears. I never use the gear selector on my truck, and it doesn't have a sport mode. It's just always in default. When you pop the button to shift gears manually, it'll display the gear that you're in when you hit the button. And then from there, you can just go down or up, but it will always downshift. It's not a true manual, like you can't just like downshift and have it hold that gear in like 6th gear. If you floor it, my truck will downshift. The Scat won't. If you're in manual mode and you go into 6th, it assumes you want to stay in 6th. So you just have to flick it, flick the paddle shifts back. And again, with the paddle shifters, if you want to kill the paddle shift altogether, just hold the right paddle back, I think for 2 seconds, and then it'll go to regular automatic mode. But man, thank you very much. That's extremely generous, Chuck. Man, I really do appreciate that, brother. And by the way, everybody congratulate Chuck. He got him a sweet hell-raising Challenger Scat Pack. Absolutely gorgeous car. Score big time on that one. So cheers on that one. But thank you very much, brother. I really do appreciate that. Chuck saying, did you like my scat picks? Yeah, in fact, that's what I was. Did you get? Hopefully, my response came through when you sent those over to me. So yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Rocking the Mopar Chat live shirt too, by the way. Awesome. But yeah, awesome car. Gonna love it. And Again, we're talking about scat packs right now. So, I guess the next question, I mean, this is a little bit off topic, but the rumored, it's like one of the worst kept secrets of the year anyway, of the 909 horse Hellcat being released. It's apparently going to have E85 flex fuel, actual real flex fuel, sensed flex fuel, not just inferred technology, just like GM. About time. Should have happened in 2015, as a matter of fact. But anyway, with all the talk about that, I have to default back to the Scat Pack is probably my all-time favorite car, all-time favorite platform for these Dodges. I know that, I got little Miss Chandelier behind me, but the banner of my channel is still Shalandra. It's still my white Challenger. And I got to tell you guys, man, it's kind of funny how much there are times where I actually really do miss that car, because you could use every horsepower that you paid for. You could use it with the Challenger, and it's got the sound, and it's got just the presence and the throttle response, and all that is so awesome. Would you be a player if the Scat Pack had the high output Hurricane engine? I mean, it's a kind of a tough question to answer, right? It may be faster because the engine itself is considerably lighter. It's got an iron block. It's a 3-liter. It's like that long. It's not near as heavy, makes the same power, but in a different way, obviously. And we don't know what that power curve would look like for the automobile, not the truck, but the car platform. Would you be a player at that? Would you even consider it? Would the thought of not having a 392 be enough to dissuade you from buying that particular car? And for a lot of people, the answer to that is unequivocally yes, without fail, because at the end of the day, it really isn't necessarily for some about the number. It's about the experience overall. Now, that's not to say that you can't, the sound of an inline six can't be ripping, but the fact is that I don't know that you're buying a muscle car to have it sound like a 6-cylinder, regardless of how fast it is, unless your name is Grand National, but there's always a black sheep, right? I guess the idea here is, will Mopar get it right? I hope so. Because if this is the world that we're going to be living in, they're going to have to figure out how to market this without using the word Hemi. And I don't know that Dodge has that capability. I don't know that Dodge has the ability to talk about performance unless they use the word Hemi. I just don't know that that it's there. But anyway, Chuck, thank you very much. Man, I really do appreciate that a ton. Says, thanks, guys. Should have just got this car to begin with. No hate on the 5.7 shaker. It was fun, but no comparison in performance and acceleration. Yeah. He's saying the driving experience in my Scat is unreal. Love it a lot. And see, the thing is with the Scat Pack, what I love so much about the Scat Pack was that it's just a set of tires away from always, well, I don't want to say always hooking, but being able to really get down with that car on the street and hook. And at the drag strip, I mean, a light hazing of the tires and it would dead hook and get out there and run. It's an 11-second car, guys. It is a legit 11-second car from the factory, especially with the new operating system. I'm telling you, the new cars are at least 0.2 quicker than the older cars, even with nothing having been changed in the engine. So by that, how do you say it? By that with that understanding, I should say, would I have kept my car? Should I have kept my car and maybe gotten, that Scat Pack shaker or that 1320 or what have you. I don't know. There are times where I really do miss that car a lot. A lot of it has to do with when I just want to go out and play. Somebody's going out to have some fun. Velocicito will be busy, I believe, this evening. But I do miss the Scat Pack, and I miss it because the power was always there. It was always usable. Where the Hellcat has more power, but the Scat Pack has more. It's more natural, and besides, it's not like Dodge was selling supercharged Hemi Roadrunners back in the day. They were all naturally aspirated Hemis, and to me, and I had made this case before for the 392 versus the Hellcat. It's cheating to have to rely on a supercharger when you got a perfectly good 392 just sitting there. Why not throw some more displacement at it? But then the horsepower wars kicked off. Dodge didn't really throw the first punch, but they landed the first big punch with the Hellcat, and the rest is history. So, Chuck's saying narrow body 275 Pirelli Zeros hook up fine unless I turn off traction control. Well, yeah, it'll be okay with traction control on, but if you really want to lay into it and smoke the tires, it will definitely do that all day, every day. But yeah, the 275s is really the right way to go with that car too. You're gonna have so much fun with that, man. I'm so stoked that you got it. But thank you again, man, Chuck. I really do appreciate that, man. Thank you so much. Ardell. So Ardell said he worked for many years in Ford dealership service department. I found there were many of the F-150s that had the same problem. It was often. I get you talking about the EcoBoost. I tell you what, man, I've got one family member that has had an Eco. He's got a 2013 EcoBoost and runs great. Doesn't have a lot of miles on it, but it runs great. I've had other family members that have had EcoBoost variants that have had nothing but problems with them. Now, these are older, so, all truth out there, transparency, as they say. But yeah, they've had a lot of problems with them. And so I was a little bit turned off by them. And the other reason why I was a little bit about the EcoBoost is my own personal experience with them. In terms of fuel economy, there is none with the EcoBoost. If you're driving an EcoBoost, it's practically impossible to keep the thing out of boost. Maybe if you're steady state cruising at like 55 miles an hour, yeah, I could see where there might be some fuel economy hiding in there somewhere. But the V8s with the multi-displacement system, even if you turn off the multi-displacement system, by the way, they'll knock down some pretty impressive fuel economy figures as well. So don't count them out, especially the Ram with 321 gears on the highway. You hold that thing at about 67, 68 miles an hour on the highway, it's actually really good fuel economy. So just something to think about there, at least in terms of my own experience. I've got to remember that when I start thinking about these fuel economy figures. Michael Groves, you got a good question, my man, saying, have you considered looking at the Ram 2500? More options for work truck, and you can get the 6.4. Here's the thing with the 2500. I have seriously considered the 2500 with one little catch. There's no incentives at all on the 2500. And they are expensive. They're easily $6,000 to $7,000 more for the 2500 for the truck that I'm looking for. That being said, I have to admit that the thought has crossed my mind. A 6.4 with a 410 gear in a 4x2 with the 18-inch wheels in dark gray has, with the vinyl interior with the rubber floors, and a spray-in bed liner, and a in a class 4 tow contraption. That's the only thing. That's the only real options that I would want for that truck. But still, it's still an expensive truck compared to the truck that I'm trying to order from Ram right now. It's just that it is significantly more expensive. And unless they started running incentives on the 2500, it ends up being, by the time I got done optioning both trucks with the incentives that are currently at least available on the Ram that I'm looking for, that I can't order, it ends up being it's close to $10,000 difference between the two. So that's why I just haven't really been looking too much at the 2500. Hemi said, I'm not embracing any of the new stuff. Dodge has to earn it, and they have done shit to earn anything on the turbos and EVs yet. Well, that's a very good point. They just don't have any. And to be fair, and to further Hemi Dad's point, they're not marketing the EVs or hybrids or anything like that, the turbo stuff. They're late to the party. I mean, I hope that there's some level of maybe some reverse engineering at work here, and maybe they're taking a look at where other manufacturers have failed. They don't want to come into this market in a position where they end up being it's just nothing but TSB after TSB or recall after recall. And maybe that's why. Maybe it's a positive. I don't want to throw it out there as negative, but in this case, this is not a case of no news is good news. This is no news is like you're just not playing the game yet. I mean, if you're holding out to see if the trend would stick, maybe I could get behind that, but nobody's really admitting to that. I mean, they were obviously putting a lot of money into the development of the Hurricane, but okay, so the Hurricane engine at 3 liters doesn't make any sense to me. Let me get back to the Hurricane for a minute. So my problem with the Hurricane at 3 liters, it's too small. It's making the same amount of horsepower, but with a ton more boost. That means potentially significantly more sensitive to fuel quality, could be maintenance issues. We're talking spark plug issues, cold packs, the whole bit. I don't understand why, because packaging should not be a problem when we're talking about this engine. Why in the world did they not make this at least 3.5 liters, or really go all in and make it 4 liters? Let me tell you why 4 liters to me makes a lot more sense than 3 liters. First of all, 4 liters with only 15 pounds of boost would have easily been a 425 horsepower and somewhere close to 525 at least pound-foot of torque engine without really having to lean on it so much. 4 liters is a traditional Jeep size engine. I mean, if you can stick a 4-liter inline 6 in a Cherokee, you can definitely put it in a truck or a Grand Cherokee, Wagoneer, whatever they're calling that thing now. It would make more sense as a truck engine because you wouldn't have to make as much boost to make the same power. You could bring the boost down, not make it as fuel quality sensitive, but more to the point, just on tip-in situations, it wouldn't have to need as much power just to get the thing moving. It would be a 4-liter 6-cylinder, so it would still get really good fuel economy no matter how you're trying to shape it up. And again, you go with the tradition of the 4-liter for the Jeep. You can call it a Hurricane if you want to, but at the end of the day, it makes more sense. It just makes more sense. So I don't understand why the 3-liter thing had to stick. 3.5 liters would make a whole lot more sense. At least it'd be kind of following in lockstep. But the 4-liter thing, to me, if I were on the pressing side of this issue, I'd have been driving for 4 liters a lot longer and a lot harder than anybody would have been pushing for 3. It's got to be some kind of a global engine platform or something like that for them to go with the 3 liter, because to me, I got to tell you, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to go 3 liter when you're talking about trucks. And for example, the Grand Wagoneer, that Grand Wagoneer is going to come in at about 6,000 pounds. And you want to try to push that around with a 3 liter turbo. It just doesn't sit right. And you could have had a high output 4 liter making 600 horsepower if you wanted to. It'd been easy. Certainly a lot easier than trying to get all the technology to work in concert with a 3 liter. And again, physically, I don't think it would have been much bigger at all, if any. Oh, Phil's asking, any new Scat Pack update? Unfortunately, no. What we've got is what we have got, and what we've got is what we're going to end with at this stage of the game. There's no talk of a 426. To be honest with you guys, they can't even get any of these direct connection aftermarket calibrations to get an EO, which is the executive order, means you're good to go with emissions. They can't even get that. And to be honest, I don't, if the 392 were put into service today, or at least set up for testing today, I don't know that it would pass the way that it did back in 2015 or 2012, I should say. Ardell saying the Hurricane has to be put into a truck in order to see what it will do and what it won't do. It has to be put through the paces so Dodge Ram can make it work or better the engine. And that's the thing. I mean, I would, if I were brand manager over Ram, I would have already figured out a way to put the standard output Hurricane into a truck, do some suspension work to it, get it out in the desert, beat the living hell out of it, get it up, just torture test that thing and put it out there for everybody to see. Let us share in your success. Let us be part of the journey. See, and if that would have been done up to this point, I'd have probably just been all giddy hoping that they were going to come out with this engine for 2023. And the way it sits now, I don't know what they're going to come out with for 23. There's been word that you could possibly get that Hurricane engine, but man, I just don't know. And because I don't know, and because I'm a little bit skittish to go with a 3 liter inline 6, I'm going to have to stick with the 5.7. And the funny thing is I'm hoping that history proves my trepidation to be all in vain. I'm hoping that people come back and say, man, my Hurricane engine is gone 500,000 miles without any issues. I beat the hell out of it. It just keeps running. It's underrated. All of that. I would love to hear that, as opposed to, well, the first couple of years were nothing but TSB problems, and you had this problem with the turbo and that problem with the cylinder head, and they had these heat issues. And, you know, I don't want to be that guy. You know, I don't want to take on the responsibility of beta testing an engine for a manufacturer that isn't really putting it out there and beating the hell out of it and saying, hey, this is fun. Look at this. This is what we're doing with these things. What they're doing is they're picking low-hanging fruit. They're marketing the Woodward Dream Cruise to be nothing, or the Roadkill Nights. They're marketing that to be basically just an outro for muscle cars, basically, and a way to introduce whatever, EV contraption or whatever is coming down the line. But they're not making strides to say, for what we know is out there, the Hurricane, saying, guys, this is what's going on with that Hurricane. This is what we're going to do with it. This is when you can expect to see it. Watch this. And have something that's Hurricane equipped, just do some long smoky burnout. This is where we're going. Ow! Something along those lines. Y'all remember the Daytona? Y'all remember that GLH? This is what we got coming for you. It's going to be nuts. And, yeah, the V8's going away, but listen to this thing rip. And the thing sounds like a freaking, a swarm of chainsaws flying around. Something cool like that would go a long way to keep the brand image where it needs to be and to showcase the durability that these engines are hopefully going to have. But again, we just don't know that. We don't see it yet. You got a lot of people that are kind of a little bit worried that they're going to be beta testing this engine the way that some people felt like they were beta testing the 3.5 liter so many years ago. Lot to ponder, a whole lot to think about, and a lot to take in when you consider just how far away this introduction is. Well, it's not that far away. We're kind of sitting right on top of it if they're going to release this thing in 23 or 24. Hemi's saying straight sixes should displace 4 liters in Jeeps. I agree with that 100%. Ardell say we will see what happens. Not sure if I would use that engine for a 3/4 ton or a 1 truck at all. Very, very good point. Maybe we'll see our 4 liter get thrown in there, right? Alberto's saying, what up, B? What's up, Alberto? Just picking up a Wrangler with a 2.0 turbo as a daily. Very fun truck. Hoping for good durability with the turbo. Should be pretty good. I've actually heard some good things about that engine. Alberto's saying he'll also be at Roadkill Nights. Hopefully we'll get to see the new models at the show. That would be very cool. I'd love to be able to go to that. Uncle Steve for saying that Hemi will continue. That is what matters without electric assistance. Very cool. Crypto saying you called that right. Ardell saying, I am a true muscle car lover. There will be no engine that will replace the V8 sound, feel, rumble, and what the muscle car is. True that. And that's the thing. A lot of people, when you buy these cars, see, the thing is today, the numbers are so stupid now today that they almost don't even matter anymore. They've gotten comical. When the Hellcat was first sent out into the world, nobody could believe that you would see a day where a manufacturer would offer up for sale and have this car be a mass-produced, available to anybody and everybody that wants it, car that could run tens if you took it to a drag strip. Well, there's lots of thousands of those cars running around right now. And, well, then they came out with the Demon. That car runs nines. And there's about 3,300 of those things running around, or 30-something hundred of those things running around right now. So what about this new thing that they're coming out with, this 909 horsepower thing? Well, what is that going to run? Enough weight reduction in the right air? Maybe it runs deep nines. Maybe it runs 9.0s. Doesn't really matter. It's a number that is really, really, really fast that a really, really, really small amount of people will be able to buy and enjoy. But there's so many really, really fast cars out right now that the fun factor seems to have been completely forgotten. And that's where the Scat Pack just basically kind of owns the crown. I mean, you can literally use all the power that you've got. You can have a ton of fun before you hit 100 miles an hour. And the thing is that with the right tires, it'll dead hook and you can just have a ball with that thing. And there's always going to be somebody faster. But the weird thing about it is that faster isn't really faster anymore. You got a lot of these guys that are, the roll race crowd that is, 16, 17, 1,800 horsepower. Yeah, that's your cover charge. To get into those clubs, you've got to be north of 1,500 horsepower. 1,000 horsepower isn't fast anymore by that standard. So I'm happy to play in the shallow end if that's the case. I've kind of already been there and done it with the big, crazy, dumb horsepower number thing. There's a reason why I'm not doing it anymore. So I'll just sit back with my box of popcorn and watch the hilarity unfold. But I got to tell you, the fun factor is in that Scat Pack range. That's where the cars are just a blast. So I'm stoked for Chuck because he got himself a really awesome car. And again, thank you, brother. I do appreciate it. Thank you, Chuck. More than you know, man. I appreciate it. Hemi dad saying, holy moly. And saying, I'm with you, brother. Oh, Crypto saying, love the color. Yep. Talking about Chuck's Hellraising Scat Pack. And Chuck saying, thanks, guys. Yeah, definitely a pretty car, man. Y'all give Chuck some love on that one. Saying he loves it. Yeah, you're going to love that car for a long time. I'd hold on to it. X is saying, Chuck making it rain? Uncle Steve was saying, did I already answer this question? The answer is no, talking about would you choose the Hurricane. Oh, yeah, and Chuck's saying narrow body 275, Pirelli Zeros, hook up fine. It's a good car for a good tire for that car. Or I was saying Scat Pack is so snappy. Yep. Chaos of the Unicorns. See, I'd sooner put my pecker in a toaster than buy a Charger or a Challenger that didn't have a Hemi. Don't care if the 3 liter is significantly faster. A boat with a 6-cylinder is a no-go for me. Understood. I get it. Chuck saying, I would have got pitch black Hellcat that I showed you, but when I saw the price, I immediately started looking at the scats. Man, I tell you what, you're not going to regret getting the Scat Pack. I'm telling you, so I drove Chandelier, what was it, like a week ago? And in fact, tomorrow evening, I'll be, putting the whole Armada through its run. And, but the thing is I drove that car and I wasn't getting on it at all. In fact, I was just literally putting it down the road. And the interesting thing about that car is that with the Hellcat, you notice one thing right away. And if I can break down the driving experience between the two, I'll put it to you like this. It's going to sound kind of weird the way that I explain it, but this is the difference between the two. The 392 at basically 11-to-1 compression, and with the 309 gear, if you're talking about a stock Hellcat with an automatic, is a snappy car. It's got a lot of real quick tip-in throttle response, and it's real snappy, and it's always lively. That car cannot be beat for just playing around 0 to 60, especially if you put a set of drag radials on the back of it. It's going to be real snappy, and it's going to hook and book every time. The Hellcat is kind of a funnier story, especially of a 262 geared Hellcat. It's only really responsive when you start to lean on that pedal a little bit. The funny thing about it is you think, okay, well, positive displacement is going to make all this power down low. Well, it does, but not at partial throttle. So you've got a smaller engine, 6.2 versus 6.4, but more to the point, lower compression ratio, 9.5-to-1 versus 11-to-1, and a less aggressive gear, 262 versus 209. It can give a weird impression that it's a little bit lazy in certain circumstances compared to the 6.4 until you really roll into the throttle, and then it remembers that it's a Hellcat and takes off. But just an odd comparison. The other weird comparison is the Hellcat kind of lulls you into you always think you're going slower than you are in a Hellcat, which in a lot of ways, well, it is the reason for the symptom of the car just feels not as lively, and it just, I don't want to use the word lethargic is coming to mind. It's not lethargic, but it just feels more lumbering, I guess is really the more correct term to use. By comparison. Uncle Steve, get rid of those Pirellis, Chuck. I like the Pirellis, but when they wear out, get some Aturos for the front, and hopefully by then you'll have be able to get a set of the Aturo drag radials, which I need to check on them because We're starting off. Well, we're a third of the way through the third quarter here. Maybe by the end of this quarter, they should have those. So maybe by September-ish, end of September, beginning of October. And I'm waiting to get a set of the Atturo rears for mine. I love the Atturo fronts. I still run the Atturo AZ850s on the front of mine. John's saying, Chuck's hanging out with Uncle, saying he's going to get some at some point. New tires. Again, I'm a big fan of Atturo. So for the daily driver type tires. John saying, yeah, 5.7 shaker here. I'm kind of regretting not getting a scat, but as a 20-year-old, not having ever driven anything fast before, he likes the 5.7 was plenty. And the 5.7 is plenty. Don't see, that's the thing. I mean, the 6.4 it is snappier and has more power, but the 5.7 is a good combination. Oh, Ardell saying, yes, EcoBoost. I own a 2021 F-150 and they're fast. I got 6 recalls, no remedies yet. I have been waiting almost a year for parts on the chassis. Oh, damn. Yeesh. Now that's reason enough. I tell you what, guys, for the amount of time that I've been doing all this research, really diving in as much as any enthusiastic consumer would, I'm finding that the more this is so weird. And I have to admit, I was really rooting for the Ford in this case. I wanted to want the Ford more than the Ram. And the reason for that is I've got a bit of an emotional attachment to Ford trucks in general. I had Whitey, which was my 09 F-150. Yes, it had a 5.4. Yes, the cam phasers clattered like a diesel, but I absolutely loved that truck. And I should have just fixed it. I shouldn't have gotten rid of it. Anyway, but that's what got me into Dodge, was that I got rid of it and got a 2014 Ram 1500 and Sport. And that's really the truck I shouldn't have gotten rid of. But, I was like, man, I really like the Ford. I kind of missed the Ford a little bit in that respect. But, man, after I drove the DT, there wasn't any going back, to be honest with you. At that point, driving the DT, it was just so much better of a driving truck that, I don't know, the Ford kind of got the nudge out. And then I would go back and I was like, okay, well, can I get a 5-liter? Can I get a 5-liter with a 355 gear? That'd be a fun truck. And then if I had a 5-liter with a 355 gear, it would kind of bridge the gap. Yeah, I get that it might not technically make as much. And by the way, I'm convinced the 5-liter, it might have the same horsepower and torque figures, but I think you need to really run premium to get the most out of that thing, because it didn't feel as strong as the 5.7 did. The 5-liter didn't. Anyway, getting back to it, maybe it is. Like I say, it could just be it needed to have fresh gas in it. Just, again, limited experience speaking here. Anyway, the weird thing about the Ford, God, this still drives me nuts. The weird thing about the Ford is how you can option the truck. Why can I get a 3.5-liter EcoBoost that makes 400 horsepower, same as the V8? Now we got to talk torque numbers. 500 pound-feet of torque versus 400. Why is it that I can option the EcoBoost with 355 gears, but I can only option the 5-liter with 331 gears with the 10-speed? I don't get that. Just kind of a weird thing. And so since I couldn't option the 5.0 with the 331 gears, really would like to have optioned it with 373s. Definitely couldn't do that. But here's Ram, just happy to give you a 321. Hey, you want a 321? Works great on the highway. Will absolutely boil the tires with the new first gear on a start. So it accelerates really hard. It's got a fantastic passing gear. I don't know that anything, even the EcoBoost 3.5-liter didn't have that the 5.7 does with a 321 gear at like a 65 mile an hour downshift. It just didn't feel as strong. Now, granted, it's fast. It's faster, but from a dig. Got to remember, all that torque is available in this one blister, and then everything kind of trails off. So anyway, personal experience again speaking here, but yeah, it might have just been how the gear, it was in sport mode, so I figured it'd be in a pretty aggressive gear, but the 5.7 in that context did feel a little bit more aggressive. Who knew, right? But why is it that I couldn't option the 5.0 with the more aggressive gear and it makes less torque? I guess I'm finally getting to my point, right? Why couldn't I option it that way? It seems to me, just seems like that would have been the smarter play. But unfortunately, like I say, it wasn't in the cards. And since I couldn't option the 5 liter with the gear that I wanted, well, the 5 liter got taken off the table. And since I could option the more powerful engine with the more aggressive gears, should sound like a win-win. But again, with some of the things that I was reading about it, talking to some of the techs about that engine and hearing some of the problems that folks have had and how early they were having those problems. And again, this falls back into my discussion about the Hurricane. See, the thing is, the 2.7 Ford seems to be pretty good. I wouldn't know anything about the 2.7 4-cylinder that GM sells because I don't care if that thing goes a Brazilian miles without an oil change. I couldn't care less. I wouldn't buy the thing to begin with. But with the EcoDiesel, I want to talk about EcoDiesel too. But with the EcoBoost kind of looming out there the way that it does, with the issues that I've heard about it, and the issues, again, past problems, I get it. It might not be the same generation still, though. Burned me 3 times, right? Learn from others' mistakes, etc. Here's the thing. Has Stellantis really done their homework with this 3 liter? Is it really going to be that good with that much boost? Coil packs, plugs, maintenance on those types of items, oil changes are going to be extremely important. That's another thing. 3.5 liter seems to be extremely sensitive to oil and oil change intervals. Yeah, I would guess so, especially with 500 pound of torque coming out of 3.5 liters. I would bet that it would. So will the new Hurricane engine be as temperamental? Who knows? I would venture a guess and say that maybe that could be a problem. And that's, again, going to be another reason why guys are going to have such an issue going with that engine over the, how you would express a lumbering V8. Well, that V8 seems to run really good and doesn't have near the issues that high-strung little twin turbo 6 is going to have. NA392 saying direct connection coming out soon with the stage 1 and 2 kit for the 392, looking at 600 horsepower. Yeah, don't hold your breath on that. What's happening with the 392 stuff is that they can't get the Hellcat variant calibrations and EO, executive order, which means they can't get them passed through EPA or CARB or whichever governing body is shooting it down. I know there's talk about what they can and maybe will do with the 392, but I have been told by a few different sources that when it comes to the NA applications, don't hold your breath and be careful. Be careful with what you're hoping for, because you might not get it, unfortunately. Ardell said, I'm with you, be on the Hurricane. Yeah, I'm just having a hard time warming up to it. Marvelous Marvin saying, what up, B Mason? Great live stream, man. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Oh, Chuck's hanging out with John saying, I drove a RT Plus shaker, 6-speed for 2 years. No regrets. I just wanted something with more balls under the hood without having to get into a Hellcat dollar signs. I understand that completely. And Chuck said he offered him quite a bit for the shaker. That's good. John said, I went to the dealership with the intent on getting a Scat Pack or a 5.0. I sat in my car and I was immediately hooked. The shaker makes makes kind of cool noises, and with the blue cat skin leather. Oh, nice. Oh, John's saying, oh, I didn't see as much. Sorry. Ardell's talking about the Hurricane, saying Dodge needs to share this. They need to prove it. Show me. I tell you something. What I'm most put off by is the fact that Dodge just hasn't done anything with it at all. In other words, there was so much talk about the 3.5 EcoBoost leading up to the release of that engine, that even with the problems that it had, guys were in love with it because it made so much power. And some of the problems that it had initially were, you could work around it. There were things you could do. Some of the fixes were kind of hacky, but anyway, there were things you could do, and there were improvements that could have been made. The problem is cam phasers are a problem, and they're a problem early on with those engines. And getting back to what I was talking about, even in trucks that have had pretty good owner involvement with upkeep and maintenance, they were seeing phasers fail at 70,000, 80,000, 90,000 miles. You might say, well, that's kind of far down the road. Well, try explaining that to somebody whose cam phaser fails at 75,000 miles, and the dealership won't do anything to help them out because they're 15,000 miles past their warranty. See, the thing is that what's turning a lot of folks off to the 3.5 liter is that when they do fail, however small a percentage that is, when they do fail, they're failing early, and they're failing far too early. So I don't know, just kind of one of those weird things that I just, if the thing is going to fail, I would like to hear about them failing at 100,000 miles, not at 60,000 miles or 70,000 miles when they're outside of warranty. Because I typically put 150, 175, maybe 200,000 miles on a vehicle. I don't want to feel like I'm going to be spending $3,000 every time the thing hits 70 or 75,000 miles to replace cam phasers. It's not part of my business plan, right? So again, with the issues that guys have had with these small engines with high output, that's one of the reasons why so many folks are kind of getting a little bit skittish. Again, 3.5 liter, we're beating that thing to death. Look at the 3.5 liter out of Toyota, though. Turbo problems, wastegate issues. Those are significant problems, and that's Toyota. It's the same displacement, but even though it does use a little bit more boost to get to the power numbers that it gets to, it's having problems. And anytime you're having problems like that, anytime you're having problems like that, it doesn't do well for the brand. And by brand, in this case, I mean small displacement, high output turbo in a truck. It doesn't do well for that brand to have all, in this case, there's really only two. The 2.7 doesn't really count, but it doesn't do anybody any good to have those engines having problems. It's going to turn guys away. And when you start to talk about that 400 horsepower being the cover charged into the club of this 6-cylinder truck turbo experiment that we seem to be in the middle of, when the 400 horse variants are having miscellaneous problems at some point in their life, that's going to start turning people off. And the thing is I get it. There's always going to be a very vocal, small minority of people that have these problems. They're going to want to let you know. And again, you don't go onto forum sites and you don't make videos about how much you love something. You're going onto the forum sites to say, hey, I'm having these problems. Have you guys found a solution for this? What other issues have you guys seen? People like to, they just love to complain. It's human nature. And they're always going to lean towards the negative, I guess. So anyway, in saying that, I understand that this probably represents a small percentage, but when you talk to the techs, that's really when, when you start getting the truth from the techs and they just say, don't get the EcoBoost. Whatever you do, get the 5 liter. Whatever problems you have with a 5 liter, they're easier to fix. They're not going to be as expensive. And the issues are, the engine's been around forever. Just get the 5 liter, whatever problems you may have. We've got a solution, even though oil consumption seems to be an issue with them. There's no such thing as a perfect engine. And I get that. And unfortunately, at this stage of the game, the closest thing to the perfect engine for me, well, fortunately, I should say, is the Hemi. Just because of my experience with it. Hemi Dad, thank you very much, man. I appreciate that. Saying, thanks for the fun stream, brother. Been sitting by the fire out back listening with the wife. Very cool. I think she recognizes your voice now as the Mopar Chat guy now. Cool, man. Keep up the good work. Thank you, Hemi Dad. I appreciate that, buddy. And thank you, Hemi Mom, too. Appreciate that. But thank you very, very much for the contribution. Definitely appreciated. He's saying, sorry, no C note like Chuck. No, I appreciate it, brother. I do appreciate it. Anything, man. I really do appreciate that, guys. Chuck saying he won at poker this week. It's all good. I love it. Congratulations at that. Very cool. Let me make sure I'm keeping up with you guys here. Oh, Chuck saying he loves the 8-speed. Yeah, the 8-speed is really hard to beat. And I'll tell you something. Once you get used to the 8-speed, it's going to be real hard to go back to a manual. You've really got to want a manual transmission car for all the reasons to love a manual. You've got to really just be dying for a manual transmission to get back into one. The 8-speed is just that good. Ardell's asking, what tires would you suggest for my 22 Challenger Hellcat wide body? Man, I got to tell you, so for your car, would like the Nitto Tri-5 R2. I really like that tire as a tire. I know I've been extremely critical of that tire, but in terms of just being a tire and doing tire things, it's actually really pretty good. I have run that tire in the wet. I did, I think, a 3 or a 4-part test on that tire where I ran it in the wet. I'd actually taken that tire to the drag strip. I think I ran like a 1060 with that tire on the back, and I was having to feather. It's not the best drag tire, but it's a really good overall daily tire for the back of that car. And then I'd pair it with 305 35s up front for the Nitto Tri-5 R2. For the rears, Nitto G2 Tri-5 G or whatever it is, the G2s up front. But definitely a good tire all the way around. Those cars come with 305s, right? Or 315s. God, starting to get my facts screwed up. Been doing this truck stuff for so long, it's displaced some information apparently. Oh, Hemi Dad saying you're dead on regarding the feel of the Scat versus the Cat. My M6 Cat with the tall gears feels more sluggish than the Scat until you look down and you're doing triple digits. Exactly. That's the weird thing about the Hellcat is that it really does do that to you. the car is so stable. This is the thing about the LX platform in general. You got to remember, it's based off the Mercedes-Benz E-Class architecture. It's actually an E-Class W211 Mercedes platform with some W212 S-Class suspension bits. So when you think about it, you're basically driving a car that was originally designed to do 150 miles an hour for an entire tank of gas on the Autobahn. So they're incredibly stable at high speeds. They don't really give a sense of speed, and they're heavy. So they're absorbing road bumps. They're just a really good grand touring platform. Well, with that, you kind of forget that you just lose track. The road feel and everything else is not the same as other cars that you may have driven before. And it's one of the, I wouldn't say it's a complaint, but it's something that a lot of Hellcat owners notice immediately, is that you think you're going 65 and you're going 90. And it's just the amount of input with your foot versus how fast you're going it hasn't made that brain foot connection come together just yet. That's real common. Oh, Ardell saying his F-150 has the 2.7 Eco and it's good. Out of the 4x4 crew cab, I'm very surprised it also has a tow package. I really do not know if it would tow good. Never tried it yet. It would, I mean, with 400 pound-feet of torque, the 2.7 will drag, whatever you would probably need to drag around just fine, I would think. Outside of like a large travel trailer, if you needed to drag a car around or something like that, it wouldn't have a problem with it. Oh, Hemi's hanging out with John Doe saying Shaker is badass. My bro has one and it never looks bad. That's right. Chuck saying, I always follow your updates, B, but where did you say you were at with your RAM package? Oh, so here's the thing. Right now, I can't order the truck that I want to order. I cannot order a tradesman with the vinyl seats and the rubber floors and all of that. The order banks just haven't opened up yet. I can order a Ford, but I cannot order a Ram. And I am fingers crossed, hoping that maybe the order banks open in August. Maybe. Anyway, it's kind of leaning that direction, but who knows? At this point, I did, like I say, I reached out to Dodge. My dealership was just saying, look, man, we don't know when we're going to be able to order this thing. I did reach out to Dodge. Dodge said they gave kind of a canned response saying that they don't really have a Stellantis / Ram, don't have any updates to give aside from, you got 2022 is out there. So, find a 2022 you love and bring it home. But that's really not where I'm at with it. I'm also kind of back and forth with the color. I'm kind of back and forth between silver and dark gray. I like the dark gray, and I'm all but convinced that I'm going to go with a set of 321 gears for that truck. I do a ton of highway driving, and the 392 geared truck just feels a little bit too buzzy to me at this stage of the game for whatever reason. It does feel a little bit buzzy, although I will say that the 392 with the HP 75, that transmission having just a better overdrive, the 7th and 8th gear, just better overdrive gears. It's not quite as bad as what it was, but the problem that I had with the 392 gear, the one that I test drove, is that when you would tip into the throttle, how can I explain? Well, the way I was explaining it is the 321 gear, when you do these partial throttle downshifts, especially on the freeway, the truck seems to need to catch up to the gear. So it's loading the truck and it accelerates. It will accelerate to that speed that the throttle input would say would be commensurate to go that fast in that gear, if that makes any sense. 392 was a little bit different. The 392 gear, you would tip into the throttle and it would downshift, but it really wouldn't advance. It wouldn't accelerate very much because tipping into the throttle, that amount of throttle input was basically the amount of throttle that it took to get the truck to go the speed you were already going. So you had to roll into the throttle a little bit more to get the truck to accelerate, and then it would command a shift. And that gave you the sense that, number one, it was struggling a little bit. It wasn't, but it just, with the way that it felt like you had to give the truck more throttle to really get it moving on the highway. And then if you wanted to really shower down on it, the 321 gear in the truck has a little bit of a party trick that it likes to play with these trucks. And that is that on the highway, you hammer a 392 geared truck at 70 miles an hour, and it accelerates. It'll vroom, and then it shifts at 77 miles an hour. It'll shift into its fifth gear. Well, the 321 gear, if you do that, it shifts, it goes all the way down into third. And then when it shifts into fourth, that gear will carry it to 95 miles an hour. And it's a more aggressive gear in terms of multiplication, obviously, because it's fourth gear versus fifth. And so it's actually more aggressively geared for the highway, and it rips on the highway compared to the 392 gear. And since I spend all my time on the highway, that's a really big plus for me for the 321 geared truck. It's something that I noticed right away. The second thing I noticed is another reason why I'm going to go with a 321 gear is that from a dig, from a dead stop, and this is in roughly 3,000 foot density altitude, by the way, I could, with the 392, I would have to really kind of modulate how I rolled into the throttle with a 392 gear. It was just like, it would, perfect analogy for this is just like the Scat Pack. How you have to kind of modulate the throttle as you're rolling into the throttle quickly to keep the tires from just boiling. Same idea with the 392 gear. You really had to modulate it, but it didn't have any wheel speed to catch up to because it's a 392 gear. So it had all the trappings of having no traction, which was fun, but it had none of the wheel speed to try to recover with throttle position. Where the 321 had all the wheel speed I needed, and it was now with the new transmission ratios more aggressive, and it just rips when you roll into the throttle with that thing, surprisingly so. So it's kind of like getting the best of both worlds, or at least a taste of the acceleration world, and then you get to keep your, flat out runs with the highway, on the highway with that highway gear that it's got. It's so nice with that 321 gear on the highway too. And you notice when you notice the difference between the two, it's like a taste that you can't untaste. It's like a flavor that you can't untaste. And it's just something that stuck with me with that 392 gear that I just didn't like. I know there's a lot of guys out there that have 392 gear is the only way to go. In certain circumstances, I 100% agree. If you're putting more aggressive tires on the thing, you're going to be doing a lot of towing, then yeah, the 392 gear might be the right one for you, especially if you're dragging like a travel trailer or something like that. It might be the right gear for you. But for me, the 321, especially with the revised transmission ratios, is for me a lot better gear, makes a lot more sense. And again, with the overdrives being even more overdriven, it just means that it's got less engine revolutions per mile that I put on the thing, which means that when I change the oil at every 4,000 or 5,000 miles, that it's just that much fresher when I do change it. So, Oh, Chuck saying he did get my response on the emails. Oh yeah, saying thanks for responding. Of course, I was stoked for you, man. I took one look at that and was amazed. I love that color on that car. It looks beautiful. Oh, John Doe's hanging out with Hemi Dad saying, yes, sir. That's why I got it. And again, Hemi Dad, thank you very much, man. I appreciate that. I won at poker, so it's all good. Oh, John saying, hey, back to your earlier point about throwing displacement instead of boost at the Hellcat. How big would they have to make the thing to make Hellcat power? If you went with a naturally aspirated engine, it's not as much as you think. I mean, you can make 700 horsepower pretty easily with 440 cubic inches of displacement. It's really not. It's not like it's in. Let me rephrase that because that's going to make it sound a little bit overly simplified. To get to 700 horsepower naturally aspirated, to get there and still have drivability, I would say you would need somewhere realistically in the 500 cubic inch range. But again, that would be to keep some level of drivability. You would have about 11 to 1 or a 12 to 1 actually compression ratio. And even then you might not get to 700. You'd get to a real comfortable 650 horsepower with that bump in displacement. Well, think of it like this: 392, where it's at, it makes just right at 500. So say 400 cubic inches makes 500 horsepower. 500 cubic inches, I'd say probably easily 5.25, 550, and be super sedate at that. If you spiced it up a little bit, gave it a different intake manifold to let it rev, and 500 cubic inches, probably 550 would get you close to that number. It'd be tough to say, but you would have to have so much cubic inches and so much RPM to cover a 700 horsepower number and still be able to, again, not only have it drivable, but be able to pass emissions and all of that. It's really tough to do with that type of architecture, but it can be done. There's engines, there's some exotics that were making close to 650 with 6.2 liters. So it just depends on the architecture, really. If you went with real high compression and then you got into four cam, 4-valve per cylinder, you can start to drop the cubic inches that you need to make that power down quite a bit once you get into that. So it just depends on the architecture at that point. Then something around 8 liters, like Viper sized. So 488-ish cubic inches would probably get the job done. But it would take some pretty exotic. I say exotic. You'd also want to pair it with an aluminum block. It would be a huge departure from where you're at now with the 2-valve engine. Let's see. Kurt's asking, B, do you get payments from the ads beneath? Not that I know of. Maybe I do. It might add to like the viewership, like the time on site portion of it. But yeah, so ads are just part of YouTube. And the way that YouTube works is a mystery to me as far as what advertisers pay what at what time of the year. And I don't even know how it works because I've had it explained to me every time I've asked the question. I've had it explained different ways. So in a way, yes, I do kind of, but it all adds up to a total viewership. It's kind of like baking a cake. Every little bit adds to the final product. So how long you're on for, the ads, what ads pay what, because I don't have a clue how that works. That we're not told any of that, at least not that I'm aware of. least I haven't been looking for it. Likes, subscribes, sharing is as far as the metric works with YouTube, is real important. Shares are a big deal. Likes are a big deal. And subscriber count makes a big difference too. All of it, it's literally like you're baking a cake, and every ingredient has an important role to play. Fastman's saying when Chrysler was in bed with Daimler, that's the best thing that happened to them in a long time. Yeah, it really was. I mean, they had a lot of good waterfall technology from Mercedes-Benz into Chrysler at the time. And again, without that marriage, you would not at all have had the Challenger, the Charger, just would not have existed. Hemi Dad saying, what do you do for a living with the work truck? I drive around a lot. I'm at job sites quite a bit. So, and that's one of the reasons why I don't want cloth at all in the interior. I want vinyl seats and rubber floors, is because when I'm at job sites, like say, for example, let's say I'm walking onto a job site and it's a hospital and I'm trouncing through, or a school is actually a better one, is a school where I've actually almost gotten stuck on a job site in Buffy, but you're walking through dirt or whatever to get onto a job site, so I can take a look at the stuff that I need to take a look at if I'm being called out, or like a pre-construction inspection or something like that. The truck has got to be able to get dirty, easily cleaned, and it has to be something that I don't have to think twice about in terms of just the general being a truck comes into play. So that said, I take really good care of my truck. It's extremely well maintained, and it's kind of one of those things where I'm a big believer that as long as you're changing oil and doing what the owner's manual says to do, be a little bit more aggressive with the oil changes, the thing's going to last a long time. And these Dodge trucks have proven that over the years. So, we've got guys that run out to West Texas. Those trucks are running 85, 95 miles an hour all day, getting out to clients, to job sites, things like that. So, but that's what it has to do to be the work truck that it is. Chuck saying, you had said if you stick with the stock tire size, stay with the 321 gear, right? Yeah, I would absolutely agree and would walk in lockstep with that moving forward. So if I were looking at a classic that had the HP 70 gear ratios, I would probably not be as happy with the truck. Like Buffy, for example. Buffy's a fun example to talk about because Buff's a little hot rod, okay? It's a tradesman, has 160,000 miles on it, 321 open diff. But Buffy in about 2250 DA, somewhere between 2000 and 2500 DA on the draggy, dropped a 1475 at like 90, almost 96 miles an hour. And the newer truck, I know that it's rated at the same power number. I get that. And I also understand that the new transmission ratios are a little bit more aggressive. Got that on the back of my mind as well. But here's the thing. The new truck has a better Y pipe, better exhaust flow, is what that translates to. Does not have a clutched fan, so you've got less parasitic drag on that engine as well. When I data logged one of the DTs, which is the new body style, the tune is a lot less skittish in that truck, just with the way that it's not randomly pulling timing, the way that the operating system is for this 2017. It's just better all the way around. and they both go into cat over temp pretty much immediately. But yeah, if I'm going to keep the stock size tires and not go with something tall like a 35-inch tire or 34-inch tall tire, it'd be about the most I'd probably want to put underneath the 321. But with the revised gear ratios, it rips with the 321, and surprisingly strong, I should say, with the 321, stronger than Buffy for sure. So I have seen guys in cooler weather run 1460s in crew cab 4-wheel drive versions of that truck. So again, like I say, I'm just biding my time and waiting until I can order mine. But yeah, if I were to get a truck, it would, or I should, if I were to get a truck, when I get my truck, power of positive thinking here. When I put the order in, it's going to be with 321 gears. So, and I'm just going to more than likely get the steel wheels. I'm really on the fence with those 18-inch aluminum wheels. It just looks like they haven't grown up yet. And in terms of color, I was initially leaning towards the dark gray. I'm kind of leaning more towards silver or white now. I don't know. I might still go with the dark gray. I think the dark gray looked pretty good. And if I did get a different set of wheels for the truck, I wouldn't try to raise it. If anything, I'd drop the back end of it and, put something on there that's still like the Dodge. Dodge has a set of wheels, and I took a picture of it, and it might be in one of the special packages that are basically the same color gray as the truck that I'm getting. So I'd probably throw those on the truck and let it ride, the 20-inch, and just let it ride. Set of 275 60s or 275 55s on those tires. Call it good. John is saying, anybody remember the 99 Charger concept? Oh yeah. You're right. They were going to put the 4.7 in it. And then that thing ran out of steam. So if I remember correctly, was the Intrepid out then? They were going to base on the LH platform. LHT? Damn, I'm having to dredge up a memory that has been soaked in barley and hops. Let me think about this. It was the what was the damn name of that thing? Anyway, I know which one you're talking about. There was a point in time where I think it was the LHT platform. That platform was going to be converted to front engine rear wheel drive. It was a front wheel drive platform. And I remember talking to one of the guys. Oh crap. What was his name? Jeremy. One of the sales manager at a Dodge dealership. I was talking to him about internet sales manager. I was talking to him about it. And there was talk about making that a front engine rear drive car, and they had a concept out. Anyway, I think it ended up being that one. But it never did get any traction. That was right as they were really hooked up with the whole Mercedes-Benz thing, doing their whole, Daimler-Benz deal. And anyway, ended up not going that route. But yeah, I do remember that. Chuck saying, question on my SRT dashboard, what driving conditions is track mode best used in, since Challengers are not technically track cars? So I used to like driving mine in track mode, just driving it around on the street. It'll be a little bit more snappy. It will allow you, so track, if yours is set up with track sport and street, the track mode will be the mode that'll allow you to get the rear end out a little bit, but will give you a little bit more traction control from a takeoff. Sport mode is kind of the opposite of that. It won't allow you to get the car too far out of sorts, but it will allow you to do kind of a burnout in sport mode. And then normal is just normal, just if you're kind of just putting the thing around. That's your initial default. It has the softest shifts. I used to drive my SRT around in track mode pretty much everywhere I went. The only time I'd put it in the street mode is if I took it to the drag strip, and it always seemed to perform better in sport mode at the drag strip, primarily because of the way that the torque management is in those cars. The track mode had a little bit more torque management in it. And so between that and having a little bit more slip between the shifts, it helped the transmission basically get the car down the track a little bit quicker in sport mode. Track, sport, custom, and auto are the modes on his. So custom is just the one where you can adjust steering. You can do steering, transmission, and suspension. So you can just adjust it between track and sport. And auto, which is the regular eco, would be kind of like normal. So that's how that breaks down. But yeah, just you can adjust it. I think in mine, I had steering in sport or track, transmission in track, and traction in sport is how I ran mine around most of the time. The Hellcat is now with the new sway bar. I just put it in sport mode. I don't even use my custom stuff anymore. I just put it in sport and run it there, because before I see I've got the same front sway bar now that you do, Chuck, and it's better in the Hellcat, far better. The car should never have had that solid. The Hellcats this is another thing about Hellcats that kind of the Challengers, not the Chargers, but the Challengers. They come with this solid 34 millimeter front sway bar that makes the car, just real bouncy, unless you've got it in street mode. It's like you're trying to hold on to something, like you're just like that, instead of, being able to kind of be a little bit more compliant. And I've found, by the way, that the car actually handles better for what I do with the car, that just, hitting a couple of the on ramps and off ramps and transitions and things like that I like to hit with the car. It feels anyway, so much more planted with the Scat Pack front sway bar than it did with the Hellcat Challenger front sway bar. The Hellcat Challenger front sway bar was so stiff that it felt bouncy, where the car now feels like it's more planted, and especially the spot where it feels really good. It's actually in street mode. That car just really seems to do well in street mode now. So kind of cool. But yeah, just play. The main thing, Chuck, just play with it. That's the fun thing. You've got all the different suspension and steering and all that adjustments. Man, whatever you end up liking the most, that's what works the best for you, man. That's the fun part about these cars, is that you can play with them. You can set them up just like you like. And I mean, that's the thing I like so much about the Dodge too, is they're big, heavy, awesome cars. And you can set them up and give them the personality that suits you best. And you can change their personality based on your mood. And I love these cars for that, man. They're so much fun. One of the reasons why I like the modern stuff so much too is you can tailor them to do whatever you like. But yeah, keep playing with them. Let me know what you end up falling into. Like I say, mine, I would actually kind of waver a little bit back and forth between modes that I liked. I would like track mode is what I remember driving the car around in the most, but I also drove it around a lot in just regular sport all the way across the board. In fact, I would put the car in sport mode and kill traction control when I went to the drag strip. And that was my quote unquote custom setup. I just put the thing in sport, but kill traction all the way. And the way you do that is you hold the traction control button down for the 10 seconds that you need to make it go ding. By the way, fun fact about the trucks, it looks like, from what I can tell, the 4-wheel drive trucks, you can completely turn off traction control. The 2-wheel drive trucks, you can't. You can numb it a whole lot, but you can't actually kill it all the way. It's almost like the traction control protocol in the truck would mirror traction control. If you like turn it off in the truck, the way that I understand it is it acts a lot like track does in the Scat Packs. John is saying, hey, B, what tire would you recommend for my A857 so I could dead hook? The Goodyears just kind of incinerate. So for you, I got to tell you, on the street, you'd think they're cutting me checks. Until the Atturo AZ850DR, which is their drag radial, comes out, which I am like rocking back and forth. In fact, I need to make a note to call them on Monday to check and see what the timeline is, if they're still looking at the end of Q3. Hopefully that's the case, because I really want to get my hands on those tires so bad I can't see straight. But until those become available, the Nitto Tri-5 R2 is really good. The Mickey Thompson ET Street SS is also really good too. But again, the ET Street SS is more track oriented. Like from a tires point of view, it's really there to get you to the drag strip and then get you home. It's not really a good everyday tire. The Nitto, on the other hand, despite all of my criticisms about the tire, does tire stuff really well. So I would say Nitto Tri-5 R2 in whatever size you're running now with the tires. If you, it's an aesthetic thing. If you've got the 9-inch wheels on the back, I'd still say run 275 40s. But if you like the look of the narrower tire, the traction will not be any different because your load site is going to be the same no matter what. So don't go too wide because it won't do any good with a drag radial. But go with the Nittos. They run a little bit wide-ish from the factory, so just know that kind of coming into the conversation. But for you, that's what I would recommend. That's what I would put on my car and not have any problems with it. And they do a really good job. In fact, one of the interesting things about the Nitto that I discovered when I was doing all the testing was not only did the Nitto do well in wet weather, and you can, it's somewhere in my product. There's like 3 or 4 videos. You can see me literally passing people in the left lane right after it rained. Jumped in the car and was, driving it to go, look, these tires are actually good in the wet when they're new. But they're stable. All of the 60 to 130 and 60 to 140, all the high load, high mile per hour testing that I've done with the car, if it if it hasn't been done on Hoosier DBRs, which a little bit, I get it, but it has been done on the Nitto Tri-5 R2. And that tire balanced out well, didn't need a whole lot of weight, in other words, to get a good, true balance going down the road. It is ultra smooth. I mean, I've cruised that car at 140 and ultra smooth, and it handles well. I mean, it handles like a proper performance tire would be expected to handle. So again, I'm waiting on my beloved brothers over at Atturo to get me my AZ850 drag radials. Love you guys. But I'm waiting on those and can't wait for them to come out because, again, I absolutely love my Atturo AZ850 fronts. I won't run another tire on the front of my car just because, it's the little tire that could. And that has been on my car for every high-speed run and every high-speed pass that I've made is had Atturos on the front of it. Some of the best in the business in lateral acceleration, in other words, just cornering, they just grip. Straight line acceleration, maybe not so great, but in cornering, lateral grip, they're really good. So, I don't know. Like, guys, you got to get me my tires. It's driving me nuts because I can't wait to get that information to you guys. I can't wait to bring that product to you guys the most because it's one of the ones that I'm the most excited about. So, Robert saying, Sup B, Robert from Wisconsin. What's happening, man? Sold his 18 Hellcat due to everything in this economy. I understand that. I'll stop there because you're showing that kind of show. I'm hoping for another in the future. So here's the thing, that there's a lot of them out there and there's always going to be a lot available. I can understand it, especially with the economy and, some uncertainty and the fact that the value of the car is never going to be more than it is today. And there's a lot of guys that are looking to move that car, the Hellcats right now, because of their value. So I totally get it, man. I understand it. But you'll get another one, man. No doubt about it. Chuck saying, I'll never stop driving muscle cars regardless of the economy, but everyone has their own situation in life, 100%. Chuck saying, I'll always play hard rock music, even though my wife likes country. I understand that. Actually, my wife and I are both real similar with our musical tastes. Not big country western fans. But other than that, very eclectic. The tire thing, I got to tell you, the tire thing the thing is that the Mickey Thompson ET Street SS, one of the best looking, cleanest looking, I should say, tires that are out there. Oh, man, it's just that lately they've had some, and I'm sure they're over this by now, but there for a while they had some issues with quality control. And they just were not balancing. I had a set of ET Street R's that I had to return. And guys, I never return stuff. Or it's rare for me to return stuff, especially like a tire. And so when the two halves came together, it was like they were off. And so half the tire was up. So it would, going through the machine, you could see it go blah, 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 blah. One of them was worse than the other. One of them was bad. And it was going like, oh, this is terrible. Anyway, Chuck's asking, what tires are you going to run on the new Ram? I'm going to run whatever it comes with until they are needing to be replaced. And then I'm probably going to run a set of Turo light truck tires on it when I get I will probably buy a set of the gray wheels. I took a picture of them. I guess it's the serve wheels, I think is what they are. I don't know. I can't really, hang on. You guys may know this better than I do, to protect and not protect and serve. It's anyway, I can't remember the package of them. Let's see if I can find this over here. I can't really see it. It doesn't make any sense to really show you because it's these wheels are what I probably will end up running on it. You can't really see it in the picture. Anyway, they're dark gray. It's basically the same color as my truck, so it almost look like they're color keyed. I'll probably run like a 305 55 on the back of it, 305 50, something like that. These tires that were on it are 275 55s. And like I say, I'd probably run whatever would match up in height, which would probably be a 305 50-ish, somewhere in there on there. It just being a Turo variant or whatever comes on that, because I just like me some Turos. And they'd be a little bit wider. They'd be kind of stanced out a little bit on the truck. It'd look good. Chuck's asking what I recommend a Turos for the Scat when it comes time to change them. Yeah, a Turo AZ850. That's what I run on mine. In fact, if you look up a Turo AZ850, if you Google it and then hit videos, you'll see the rim. Actually, you'll see one of the rims that's that tire. Oh, wait, no, it's not that tire. Maybe it is that tire. That it is. You'll see that tire actually is on my Hellcat. That is the exact tire that's on my Hellcat now on the front, but you'll see my white Challenger. It is just the wheel itself. It just AZ850 review. I don't think that's the review where I'm in the back trying to drift that thing through an industrial park, but that one's one where I forget what's on that video. Anyway, it's on there. It's myself and Riley's. And like I say, I love those tires. They're not very expensive. They hit way above their weight class in terms of performance per dollar. And I can tell you that if I needed like some runaround tires for a Scat Pack, that's the ones that I would go with. They're not going to hook like a drag radial at all, but they will absolutely get you from where you are to where you need to be and back. You can burn them off the car, and they're the least expensive tire that is high speed rated, like Y rated. And you just have a lot of fun with them. And again, that I will stand by. They are some of the absolute best in terms of corner, like lateral grip. So definitely would work. Yeah, the drag radials suck on wet roads. Yeah, they do. I just don't know what the tread pattern is going to look like for the Aturos. I don't know how deep it's going to be. One of the issues with drag radials, usually stereotypically, is that they had just a really short amount of tread depth, and some of that may be because it's a softer compound, and don't want to have the actual tread itself moving around too much. I don't know. I don't have any idea. Anyway, you're right. They're not that good in wet weather, and the best tire that I have found that has worked well in the wet. I mean, it wasn't pouring down rain, but it just rained. You can see me running through all the puddles and I'm going down the highway. Gerard saying, yeah, shallow depth just enough to pass Dot, which is about right. But you can see me running that thing in the wet, and it actually did pretty well. I wouldn't recommend it though. But for just buzzing around, and like I say, if you're going to be cooking tires on this thing, the Turo's least expensive of the group, performs fine. They balanced great. That was the other thing, is that they balanced out nice, and I never had any issues with them. So I recommend them only because they're a practical tire. I'm not going to say that they're the best performing tires, because they're really not. In terms of acceleration and all of that, but they wear like iron, all things considered. And from a practical standpoint, they're good tire. They're just good, so, they're not 888s, but they're not priced out like 888s. And they're a good looking tire too. So I like them. Chuck saying, thanks for input, B. Thank you very much, my friend. Ooh, and with that, guys, I am going to have to wrap it up. We are coming in at 2 hours and 7 minutes, so I've got to pull the chute. But, guys, I want to thank each and every one of y'all for hanging out with me. Would not do this without you. Love each and every one of you. Chuck, Hemi Dad, thank y'all very much. I can't thank y'all enough. Chuck, huge supporter, man. I really do appreciate that. Hemi Dad is too. Thank y'all very much. But with that, guys, get out there and do something cool for somebody. Chances are they need it way more than you know. And if you're going to sit it, don't bend it, keep your shiny side up. That is a wrap, guys. We'll catch y'all on the next one. Truck Watch continues. Maybe next time we chat, I will have more news. That'll be in just a few days, but hopefully we'll have some more news at that point. But until then, it's fun to speculate with this new stuff. But, guys, that's a wrap. Got to go. Adios.